No one's ever walked into work. No one's gone on a podcast and been like, the secret to life is send more emails. But I would say that. I'd want that almost to be the headline on my work tombstone, send more emails. Because by sending more emails, yes, it took 30 seconds or one more minute, but I'm doing that to save me hours and hours of work on the back end.
Welcome to The Lift, the show about leadership, growth, and getting what we want. I'm your host, Ben Brooks. For over a decade, I've worked with CEOs, their executive teams, HR departments, and entrepreneurs to identify what drives their success and what holds them back. And now I'm excited to share those insights with you. On The Lift, we pull up to see the bigger picture from accomplished leaders who know how to get things done in a rapidly changing world. We've got all of that and a lot more coming up next on The Lift. This may be a surprise to some, but most problems at work aren't actually about performance or effort. They're about unclear communication. Someone wasn't explicit enough and suddenly expectations don't match. Deadlines feel shaky, anxiety goes up, and everyone ends up with a headache. That's why today's episode is all about communicating better, more explicitly, and managing expectations before things go sideways. Joining me today is Justin Kerr. Justin is a best-selling author and the creator of Mr. Corpo, a modern, no-fluff guide to workplace excellence. His books include How to Be a Boss, How to Cry at Work, and my personal favorite, How to Write an Email, which honestly should be required reading. He's also a former senior executive at Levi's, Uniqlo, Old Navy, and The Gap. I've known Justin for a long time, and he's always been known for his radically clear, no-nonsense approach to communication and expectation setting. He's even got a nickname, the Efficiency Monster. Today on The Lift, Justin's going to help us set clearer boundaries, communicate with less stress, and manage expectations in every direction at work, up, down, and across. Justin Kerr, welcome to The Lift.
Hello.
It is bright and early for you.
Yes. My favorite time of the day.
You're a morning guy.
A morning guy. To me, if you get up early in the morning, everything in your life is easier. And so when I meet someone who's like, I sleep in, it's hard for me to get up, I kind of look at them and I'm just like, you are an alien to me and we can never be friends and I can't relate to you and let's just kind of go our separate ways.
Were you like this as a little kid? Were you rocking out of bed early and organizing your day?
I think really when I think about it, we went to church at 7 a.m. in the morning every Sunday growing up. So I had the rest of my day to do whatever I wanted on Sunday. And that was fantastic. And I had friends that would go to church at 11 o'clock. And it's like, can you come play? And they're like, no, I got to go to church. And then they got to do lunch. And the whole day's ruined. So that's probably where it started. And then I carried that on. And then, I know we're going to talk about work and things like that and work culture. That's where I really hit the ground running was anytime I had any issues at work, you just get into work earlier the next day and you have the time to solve stuff. So to me, it's the secret to success.
Well, it is a peek into your psyche, Justin Kerr. I know you've gotten the nickname the Efficiency Monster, and this early riser thing sort of seems like you're in character there. What's the genesis of that nickname?
I don't know how you feel about nicknames that are self-imposed. I think a lot of people look down on these ideas.
No. Nicknames can come. A good idea can come from anywhere.
For me, Efficiency Monster was something when I kind of started doing these books and writing books and going on tour, I kind of described myself that way because I liked the idea that, hey, efficiency, that's great. And the idea of a monster is, hey, it's a little bit scary. It's a little bit overwhelming. And there's some dark edges to this, And so being an efficiency monster means, yes, I am obsessed with finding the most simple way to get things done, create simplicity out of chaos, get into work. I think I worked 20 years in corporate America and never worked past 5 p.m. And people are like, how did you do that? And I'm like, because I was really scary in the morning and got up and went to work at 6:30 and did all my work. By 8:30, then I sat back, drank a coffee, checked the internet, and by the time everyone else rolled into work, I was already had done everything. And so I think that name is purposely a little bit like on edge of efficiency monster. You must be great. And it's like, but there's some things that are scary about it.
Well, monsters sometimes are powerful. They're a
Right.
formidable force. And I'm just thinking even you versus your internal competition at work and in the internal labor market on a C-suite team, that, you start to have even more influence if you're a step ahead. It's often, that if you're in front of something, everyone else is sort of following or reacting to you.
That's exactly it. I'm definitely someone that it's not always that I was an efficiency monster because I'm trying to get ahead or I'm trying to do these things. I'm also an efficiency monster just because I want my life to be simple and easy, and I don't want to be at the behest of someone else. And so if I'm staying ahead, if I'm over communicating, that's probably my favorite word in the workplace is over communicating. If I'm doing that, then you can't bother me because I'm getting you all the information you need. So you're not going to send me one of your stupid emails or one of these questions that I don't want to answer because I've already given you all the information. So, it's a little bit selfish. I'm doing it so that you don't bother me. That's part of like the psyche and rationale. It's just like, I want my life to be simple and easy and no surprises. That's another big theme for me.
And in terms of what's important to you kind of on a values perspective, because we'll talk about efficiency, we'll talk about managing expectations, we'll talk about communication. Why does people not bothering you or, not being status matter to you? Because some people wouldn't care. This is part of the deal. Why is that important to you?
Gosh, this is like therapy also.
Oh, yes. This is a free one.
I mean, I'm tempted to go deep and say, you know what? When I was a kid, my dad did silent treatment to me. If I ever did anything wrong, he wouldn't talk to me for a week, or sometimes it was a month, or sometimes it was 6 months.
Whoa.
And so I think that created a psyche in my head where it's like, I need to do everything right so that I don't get into this dynamic. And I don't think it's a big leap to say when I got to work in this,
Sure.
let's say paternal relationships of boss, employee, approval, disapproval. For me, I had kind of trained myself to, if I want to do everything right so that things don't go wrong, so that I don't get in, this dynamic that is like absolutely, paralyzing to me, I've got to be on top of everything. And that extra effort, that's probably what put me in that state of mind. So, wow, you just took me to a place I don't even know I wanted to go there, but I just said it.
We're kind of spelunking right now. We didn't know we were going down this part of the cave, but we both got our hard hat on and our light and our picks, and we're there. So you get the silent treatment if you had not done something right or he was disappointed, and so there's sort of a penalty box, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
that's a good way to put it.
You wanted to sort of avoid that penalty box with managers. And I love that you brought up the paternal thing because I have often thought that people show up a lot like they do with their parents as an employee. And people often manage as they are parents to others or as they were parented, even though that's often very dysfunctional. It is our root of a sort of power dynamic in our adult life where very few people have that sway over us like a supervisor or manager in the workplace.
And, I think as a manager, it's incredibly challenging when you're handed other human beings and you're told to, quote, be in charge of them. And you're trying to give them feedback, or you give them a look across the table, or you sit them down to say, hey, I think this went well, but, this part could have gone better. And their reaction is outsized, or you're just like, why did they react like that? And you don't know that, oh my gosh, their dad used to look at them like that. So you looking at them like that has triggered that response, and you don't know that background. And so all of a sudden things start devolving quickly. So yeah, I think we are products of how we were raised, the different experiences we've had. We bring all of that into the workplace. We throw you together and we're like, this human being who was a good individual performer, you're now in charge of 3 other human beings that you know nothing about. You know nothing about their history, their family history, their current situation, and now you're trying to get them to send good emails. This is a recipe for a big, messy stew,
Well, it speaks to sort of this idea of managing expectations. And there's an expectation science. People study this. This is a field. And you've written a number of books. And that's where we had first met. You had given a talk in a seminar at Noya House where was at a co-working space. It was at a groovy time there.
I remember it well.
And you and your fabulous late wife were there. And I was quite captured by how plain spoken in a very clear way you were about what's going on between coworkers and between managers and employees, and that you really took ownership to manage what people expected of you, and you made things extremely explicit, which is years later, I've learned that being explicit is one of the core parts of being an effective leader in organizational dynamics. So tell us about generally the idea of managing expectations in the workplace and how individually that's so important, not just at a corporate goals level.
One of my favorite quotes is from Oprah. You teach people how to treat you. And so I always use the example of if you answer emails at 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. or on a weekend, then you've taught that person, I will answer emails at 6 and 7 p.m. or I will check my email on the weekend. So now there's an expectation that you answer emails on the weekend. And now you're in a vicious cycle of, why do I always do work? Because you've set expectations that you do these things. So I think that applies to all of our individual interactions in the workplace, which is I'm teaching you how I want to be treated. And so that comes down to I've set clear expectations. Now we're going to get into that groove. And for me, my philosophy in the workplace as an individual is you have to take ultimate responsibility. You are never a victim. And so let's say I set a deadline for Wednesday at 3 p.m. Well, I don't just sit around and wait till Wednesday at 3 p.m. for the deadline and then be like, Ben, where is the information? I told you the deadline. Why isn't it here? I think it's my responsibility to make sure you hit that deadline. So on Tuesday at the end of day, I'm re-forwarding that email to you being like, hey, just a reminder, wanted to make sure you're on track for that Wednesday at 3 p.m. In the morning, I'm checking, hey, just want to make sure we're on track for that. I'm following up. I'm forwarding it. Now, a lot of people are going to say, why do I have to do that? Versus I gave you the deadline. It's your responsibility. But to me, I want to make sure I get that by 3 p.m. because my life is easier. So I'm going to do 2 extra follow-ups to make sure I get that information. Because if I don't do that, guess what? It gets to 3 p.m., you say, hey, I was busy, I'll get it to you by 5. But now guess what? You've ruined my life because now you're not getting me that info till 5. Now I have to work past 5 p.m., which I really, really don't like. Everything waterfalls from there, all because I didn't want to send one more reminder email to make sure you're going to do the thing I need you to do.
Well, it's very clear because I think there is uncertainty and anxiety in a system, and a system can be 2 or more people. And so if you don't know if they're doing it on time, or if they haven't let you know that it's not going to be on time or that they need something, the system is anxious. And that's the statusing, and that's the circling back, and that's the pinging on Slacks and Teams, et cetera, that people hate about work. But it's really rooted in lack of certainty and clarity that manifests in anxiety.
You're hitting on something just gigantic. I talked about it from the boss relationship to an employee, or by the way, a peer-to-peer interaction. But
yes,
let's talk about the idea of, I believe in the workplace, there is a empty space between you and me if we work together. Let's say you're the boss, I'm the employee. There's an empty space that exists there. Now, I have 2 choices. One is I wait for you to fill up that space with questions, anxiety, emails, annoying things that you're sending me asking for. And then I'm constantly living in a world of reaction. And I'm, surprised and things are urgent and I can't control my day and the flow of information. The alternative, the one I subscribe to, is I am going to flood the field with so much information that you're not going to have time to send me your annoying questions and emails. I'm constantly forwarding FYI. Hey, I'm on track for Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Hey, I'm actually going to get it to you by noon. Hey, I just met with Julie. Things are going great. That report's going to be ready on Friday. I'm giving you so many updates, and I'm not asking, do you want updates? I'm just sending them to you. Hey, here's the update. Here's my question. I'm filling that field between you and I with all of my information for the simple fact that you can't fill it with all of the stuff that's annoying to me. So I think whenever I hear someone say, oh, I'm bogged down in emails, oh, I'm getting all these questions, all these meeting requests, to me, what I'm hearing is you are living in a reactionary victim point of view versus be proactive, get the information out there, and then people don't bother you. If you're giving updates, if you're sharing the information, there's no need for all these follow-ups and check-ins and anxiety and weird conversations when the boss walks by and goes, oh, I'm so scared to ask Justin if he's going to hit that Wednesday 3 p.m. deadline, but I need to. So I'm going to try and hit a bank shot by talking about something really weird. And then he's not going to pick up on it. And, life at the office is so hard and complicated. It's like, no, just ask for what you need.
I think that a lot of folks are in that defensive, show up at 8:55 for the 9 o'clock meeting and scramble through the day. And you had said something to me more or less that if your boss is asking you for status, you failed.
That's right. That's your first clue.
That's a defect in the system.
Yep. That's your first clue. Like, oh, you just asked for something? Okay, yeah, of course I'm going to get it for you. But that is my first indicator. I should have given you an update. The fact that you don't have what you need when you need it should be a learning experience for me where I say, okay, next time I need to get this to them earlier, or I need to be proactive on this. So those are little clues. Anytime someone's asking you for the information, that means, ooh, I missed a chance to over communicate to them in advance of that.
When I interview people for jobs and I talk about the way to get the worst out of somebody, I say, how does a boss get the best out of you and the worst out of you? Damn near 100% of the time, it's micromanagement is the worst. And they don't like being micromanaged and all these things. But I always probe into that to say, like, well, how did you wind up being micromanaged? Because sometimes you have a truly overbearing, controlling maniac of a boss, but even still, you can get in front of that person. But so often people need micromanagement and they resist it, but then that's what they need. And so I think what you're talking about is actually more of that space and getting in front of it. And I explained, I said, look, if I ask you for status, it means I've already been thinking about it. I've been worrying about it.
That's right.
I may have done my own self-service in Slack or HubSpot or some other tool to try to find it, which is a waste of time. Then I have to decide, is it a good time for me to reach out to you about this? And how many things have I asked you for? And are you having a good day? And then I have to figure out, how do I do that in a tone that doesn't make me feel sharp or what and give context? And the amount of, and again, I try to probably over-index on being thoughtful, but it's very inefficient for me to know where the status of a thing is that someone is responsible for and accountable for and being paid for.
Well, I think there's that. I think there's also this like missing moment in the workplace, which is when a boss has an employee or when two coworkers get together, there should be almost a mandated moment where it's like, let's spend 15 minutes, because 30 minutes sounds like a lot. 15, everyone has 15 minutes in their calendar. You should be forced to sit together for 15 minutes and you each set a timer and you say for 5 minutes, here's how I like to work. I get nervous towards deadlines. I'm someone who likes to follow up. And you can explain these things because, by the way, that's an exercise in self-awareness, one, which most people don't do at work, but also two, telling the other person, this is how we can work well together. I tell people when I meet them, when I'm working with them, I say, I am obsessed with time. Things have to be on time. Things have to start on time. Things have to end on time. If you walk in 1 minute late, that is a death pill to me. And so if I tell you that, okay, I know Justin is obsessed with time, so I'm going to make sure I show up on time. Now, I want to sit for 5 minutes and listen to you. For the next year, you're going to be able to have a great working relationship because you spent 15 minutes telling each other, this is what I like and don't like. This is what's important to me. And this stuff I don't care about. I don't care what time you come into work or leave work. Just get your work done. Okay, now I'm not going to pretend to work at 5:30 because you're still in the office. Stupid stuff like that where we're all trying to read each other's minds. Better to tell the honest thing so we can see each other for real rather than, like I always like the word bank shots. Like people are trying to like bounce it off 3 walls to get it in the basket versus just walk up and just drop it in the basket.
You mentioned the efficiency part and this time part is so important to you. At a philosophical level, what does time represent to you? Why does that matter to you so much?
I grew up in corporate America. I kind of went to work there when I was 21. And, I was kind of went through this anxiety of am I a sellout? Am I wasting my life? What's going on? I had friends that were in bands. I had, people, artists that were doing interesting things. And I was like, should I be doing that? Why am I working in corporate America? And what I came to realize was all my friends that were in punk bands and doing cool stuff, they still had a 9 to 5 job. It's just their job paid them $15 an hour. And so what I realized was, hey, why don't I make my job a 9 to 5 job and I'll make, whatever it is, $100 an hour. So then it became, okay, I'm okay working in corporate America as a means to give me the freedom with money that comes with having income to buy the art supplies, to rent the studio time. And so then what I said is, hey, if they're leaving work at 5 o'clock, I will leave work at 5 o'clock. And then I said, how do I leave work at 5 o'clock? I said, what's the free time in my day? Everything in the morning. No one's ever called me and been like, hey, let's go hang out at 6 a.m. Hey, let's go get a drink at 7. I mean, I'd be open to that kind of call. But, for the most part, I was like, these are the free hours. So I was like, you know what? If I want to have time equals freedom to me, or the things I want to do in creative pursuits starting at 5 p.m., I will do everything I can to achieve that. And that's where that efficiency came in. And that's where the early mornings came in. That's where realizing that the hour from 7 to 8 a.m. alone at your desk, sending emails, doing work, thinking, putting things together, that hour in silence and peace is worth 2 or 3 hours of the hubbub in the middle of the day when you're being disrupted and you're distracted and things like that. The original question was, what does time mean to you? It means, for me, I had the freedom to do the things I wanted to do, which in my case was I started a record label, I joined a band, I put out a zine, these different creative endeavors that filled up my cup outside of the workplace.
Well, I do think it gives you certainly a why for efficiency. You had the band, you had the thing, the interest, the writing. And so, this idea of winning outside of work and winning at work do seem very related. And you're a parent. That's a definite way to win outside of work. And I know a lot of parents have a real efficiency breakdown or breakthrough when they become parents because they have to.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, when I became a parent much later in life at the age of 45, look, I think how we spend our time, how we set priorities, if you don't have at your desk or if you haven't written down, here's the top 3 priorities in my life, you can't live an organized life that's going to be as fulfilling as it could be, because you need to know this is more important than this. This is more important than this. This is more important than this. And by the way, there is nothing after those 3. Where does your career fit into that? Is it career because of the income before your husband or ... You need to understand these, because that's how we organize our life. That's how you decide, do I stay home to do breakfast with the kids, or do I go into work to get there early to get it done so that I can be home at 4:30 instead of 6:30 so that I can get to the soccer practice.
And in the perception of your managers, they weren't necessarily viewing you as a slacker or a low performer.
Oh gosh, no. I mean, because I was flooding the field with so much information. They had everything they needed from me by 7:30 in the morning. And when something was due, I always turned it in 3 hours earlier before everyone else. I went to work. I never asked, is it okay if I leave? I just left. And that's one of those key things. It's like, you don't want to ask someone, hey, do you want a lot of updates or not? Because now I'm making you decide, well, what does that mean? A lot of updates. I don't want to get too many and this and that. And it's confusing. I put the pressure on you to answer it versus just perform. I think some people get caught up in asking permission versus just doing it and show that this is going to work well. And then people learn how to treat you and learn how you get stuff done.
I think what you're talking about is building your own structure, that instead of having, a lack of structure, so everyone's pinging you and asking for random things and you're on your back foot, you've sort of mechanized how you do that work, and you put everyone else's requests and needs into that structure so you can organize and you can prioritize.
That's right. That's right. And you're kind of getting at something for me. I'm really invested in work being easy. I'm not invested in the workplace being complicated. And for me, the workplace comes down to two pieces. People. Okay, there's some things we got to work on with people, understanding people, interacting with people. By the way, human beings, not managers, bosses, things like that. And then process. It's people and process. And how do I get the efficiencies in my process? How do I build the structure like you're talking about that's going to make this work? And then the people part. When you just break it out into 2 sections, it all of a sudden things start to make sense. Things get a little easier. It's if you throw it all in a big pot and be like, oh, this is so confusing. Like Julie's like mad and there's 4 meetings today and no one filled out the form and I didn't set the debt and someone missed the deadline. It's like, that's overwhelming. But if I'm just like, okay, I'm failing on the process part, or I need to work on my people part, breaking things into bite-sized chunks. I think that's a lot about what my corporate survival guide books are about, is breaking things into their most basic level and then building them back up, and I think we don't really get a lot of that training.
No.
People go to the workplace out of college. They've been writing essays with introductions, supporting evidence, and conclusions. And now they get into a workplace and no one has said, this is how you send an email. There absolutely is a formula to a good email or a bad email, right? This is how you manage up. This is how you communicate. There's none of this training.
And I love the people and processes decoupling, because like you said, it is quite overwhelming. I think a lot of employees and executives and managers sort of assume that someone else is the grand process master and that there's someone's figuring out process. But at the desk level, at the team level, you have to create a lot of your own. And that's what I'm hearing is there's an entrepreneurial side of you that you said, hey, I've got to define my own processes.
Well, it's like, do I want this to happen to me or do I want it to make it happen? One of my least favorite things in the workplace in corporate America is the never-ending promise that next time it will be better. Next time the process will work. Next time we will figure it out. It never happens. And those false promises, I think, kind of cloud everybody's experience versus saying to people, hey, we work in a business where we have to change our mind quite a bit. And that just is what it is. So let's get used to it or go work somewhere else. I'd rather someone say, this is the reality and now let's move forward, rather than this endless hope out there that then people can hold on to, get frustrated by, say you didn't live up to. I'd rather just be like, it's messy. And this is, let's do the best we can within the mess, rather than promising something that you can't really deliver on. That's one piece of it. And then the other piece I would say in response to that is stop trying to change the world and just change one tiny thing at a time. Find the smallest efficiency to fix something and just be satisfied with that and do it. And then people are like, oh my gosh, including the link in the email made it so much easier, And then you're like, okay, wow, Justin has a reputation for making things better. And then I'm like, I like that positive feedback of people saying you did a good job. So now I'm going to find another efficiency and stack 5 small efficiencies up. That has its own momentum, that has its own just kind of like, hey, this is fun. I like doing this. Let's find more of these. But you have more success finding small improvements rather than waiting, like you said, for the grand wizard of organization to fix everything in one fell swoop.
You mentioned that incrementalization. It reminded me of the second C-suite boss I'd ever had. And she had been brought up through banking and insurance and had always been in human resources as a corporate executive. I found that I would go into the one-on-ones, and I know that this is one-on-ones are a real minefield.
I'm obsessed with these.
And, we'd go in, and first of all, because there wasn't that much clarity or purpose, I was kind of, again, not bringing a lot of structure. I was just having her energy come at me. Well, sometimes her energy was talking about the CEO and how he's a nightmare that day, or bouncing ideas around something completely unrelated, or talking about our personal lives. It was nice to have that on the people side of it, but that would probably be better for a cocktail or sitting for a coffee in the courtyard or something. And I started to bring in the ugliest slide I've ever made. And it was the date, and it would say, agenda, and I would put in rank order prioritization. So if I really needed an approval on a financial item, I'd put that as the first thing. It was actually number 2. The first thing was always, what can I do for you? What's on your mind? That was always the first thing. She'd take notes on it, and they were in a file cabinet, and she saved them. And all of a sudden, it was so easy to get her approval and trust.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, when people get to this level where they're in a floor with a bunch of, mahogany doors, what's the kind of upward management or the one-on-one when you start to work for someone in a really big job?
I say very simply, at any level, you cannot be good at your job if you don't have a set schedule of 30 minutes of one-on-one time with your boss. You cannot be good. You can survive. You can be doing okay. You think you're doing well, but it's exponential if you are able to have 30 minutes scheduled every week with your boss, no matter what. And there's rules to this. We talked about people and process, the process of a one-on-one. One, I love that you printed out and brought it. That's fantastic. That physical object, they get to look at it, things like that. To me, I always say you need to send it by 5 p.m. the day before so that they can pre-read, because nobody likes to be surprised. But if I've sent the agenda by 5 p.m. the day before, I've let them digest it. They know what to expect. And by the way, I have the benefit of now they might be prepared to answer those questions. Because if I just walk into my boss and be like, I need approval on this budget, they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. I need to look at it. I need to think about it. But if I've given it to them the day before, now when I walk into the meeting, and again, I love the printout. I love putting it on their desk, and I have the same one. Now we're looking at it together. They know how many questions I have. This is really good. Now we can go through this. Now I'm kind of reacting to what you did. I would never start a meeting with such an open-ended question as, how are you? What can you do?
Well,
I will never do that ever.
Yeah. Yes.
I would never do that. I would be like, hey, I have 3 things I need from you. Then I'd like to just open it up for what you need or what you want.
It's part of teaching people how to treat you, because I think there's a little submission in there that again, coming from a consulting background, you're the client. What do you need? When in reality, I know what they needed because it's the responsibilities we've already agreed to.
Right.
And again, I think you're talking about increasing the value of that half hour or hour, because I know a lot of times the one-on-ones get bumped and things. And the incrementalism was, I made that printout. Well, the next incremental thing was I moved the bullets from dots to check boxes.
Right.
So she got the dopamine hit, and she would.
Ben, this is it. The sense of accomplishment. Because I would even say when I'm doing that list, I want to build momentum in the meeting. And I might have 3 things that I'm like, this is easy. They're going to say yes or no. Oh, and now the boss is like, hey, I'm good at this. I'm a good boss. I just gave it a roll. Hey, this second one, this is easy too. Hey, we just did 3 things in a row. We're really good together. Okay, here's the hard one. Versus if I start with the hard one, that could be the whole 30 minutes. So there's a curation to these things. There's a process. There's a system to this to make it build. And even when you're in the C-suites with the mahogany floors and the big door, that boss is sitting behind the door wondering, do people like me? Am I good at my job? What's going on? I'm 100%. Insecure. No one talks to me, by the way. When you get up there, you get lonely. That is the word, lonely, because there's no one else to complain to. There's no one that talks to you. You're not on the floor in the middle of the jokes. No one invites you to coffee. So if you can walk into that room understanding this is a human being, not a COO, how do I meet that moment? And part of that is just processing these things. Hey, I'm organized. Hey, I'm going to build momentum. I gave you a pre-read so you're not surprised. And now we're going through these things, And by the way, pre-reads are the secret sauce, because it's not just between you and your boss. It's also if you need approval, let's say for something, understanding on the team in the room, who are the people that are going to have doubts? Who are the people that are going to pick holes in what I'm trying to propose? And not waiting until that meeting. This goes back to what you talked about, which is like home run culture. Like, I'm going to give such a great presentation.
Yes.
Everyone's going to stand up and clap and I'm going to get approval. It's like that almost never happens.
Assume you're not Don Draper and Mad Men.
Right. Okay? Right. Okay. Yes, that's right. But if you're willing to understand, okay, who are the people that are going to have these questions? How do I get them on my side before I walk in the room? Sending them the pre-read. Hey, Ben, for this meeting tomorrow, I just wanted to share what I'm going to be presenting to Cheryl, so you get a chance. Let me know if you have any questions. All of a sudden, by giving you the pre-read, soliciting, do you have questions, or will, I'm not saying, do you support this, but I'm saying, let me know any questions. When we get into the meeting, I feel I've now taught you, this is not the time for you to ask the questions. I gave you a chance to tell me in advance. Now I'm expecting your support. So there's some subtlety in this where it's like, hey, I'm reaching out. I'm giving you a chance. Let me know what you think. But that way, when we're in the room, all of a sudden Cheryl sees, whoa, Ben didn't ask Justin any questions. Usually he's the toughest one in the room. I guess this must be a good idea. And yes, by the way, that's extra effort. I have to send that email to you. You're not even the one who's going to do the approval, but I'm getting you on my team. And what I always say is, I want to send that extra email. No one's ever walked into work. No one's gone on a podcast and been like, the secret to life is send more emails. But I would say that. I'd want that almost to be the headline on my work tombstone, send more emails. Because by sending more emails, yes, it took 30 seconds or one more minute, but I'm doing that to save me hours and hours of work on the back end, because sending that email got me the pre-read, made you more comfortable, got me the approval, rather than waiting 2 days for your schedule to open up to circle back to see if you're ready for an answer.
And I do think even of those stakeholders, one last point is that, you're showing them respect, that they're not surprised.
That's right.
And that you thought enough about them, because a lot of this is ego at the end of the day, that you thought enough about them that even if they're not the decision maker, they could sink the thing.
Yep.
So how do you give them that opportunity? And they also can't play as many games in the room. Oh, we're going to need to think about this, or I hadn't heard about this, and I'm going to need some time to look. It's like, no. We're going to stop all of those games. And I think
yeah. You say to Cheryl, in front of Cheryl in the room, Ben and I were talking about this earlier. I'm really excited to present it. All of a sudden, I've subliminally told the room, I've got dangerous Ben on my team. And they're going to be like, wow. So now it looks like I'm a team player. So now I look like leadership material. And
it's bipartisan legislation is co-sponsored at this point. Yes, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
We're ending today's episode with the heat check, our guest's hottest take on how the way we work and lead will change in the next 5 years. Given you mentioned AI and some other of these things, how do you see, the role of, being a manager or an executive or even an employee changing in the next 5 years?
Well, Ben, I'm retired, so thankfully I don't have to think about any of those things whatsoever.
Goals. Okay, flex. All right.
But my hot take is that remote work doesn't work. I mean, we're already seeing it. Everyone's coming back to the office. I think it worked when we started COVID because everybody knew everybody. We've all been working very intimately. We've spent years interpersonal relationships, seeing each other, understanding things. And I think through COVID, we were able to ride out that preamble of experience in person through for a few years of interactions over Zoom calls. But I think as we've gotten farther and farther away from interpersonal, intimate interactions, everyone's realizing, how in the world do I teach? How do I learn? How do I lead? How do I actually get the most out of these other people I'm working with if all I see is a little square box and we never have that personal interaction? So I don't really see, and I'm sure someone could absolutely say the opposite. I don't actually see us all becoming computerized and all of those things. I think it actually becomes tighter together. The humans need to be together to interact and have the magic and the spark and the positivity and all these pieces. And maybe the process part can be efficient. We can find efficiencies and get some of these things. We all fill out forms that it's like, why can't a computer do this? Sure. Let's let the process part become more efficient. But the people part, I actually think people need to be together. We do better when we're together, when we see and we touch and we feel. Those are probably dangerous words in the workplace, but you know what I mean. So my hot take is more people together is going to be powerful and then supported by some of these structures. And by the way, I don't think the structures have to be life-changing. It's simple stuff like help us write great emails in this format. Help us fill out this form. The stuff they're doing with some of these slide presentations that you used to spend 7 days on that they can do in 7 minutes with a prompt. That's amazing to me.
Well, Justin, thanks for joining us today. I think you've been a fantastic friend, mentor, inspiration. I have bought many of Justin's books for many people, and I have never gotten anything but praise and thank you and delight. So, Justin, any final words you'd like to give to our listeners?
No, send more emails and always use bullet points. That's all I have to say. Bullet points are the secret to life. So,
okay, Justin Kerr, 2028. Vote for him. All right. Thanks for joining. Cheers. All right, everyone. Let's turn today's episode into action. Here are a couple things to think about this week. 1, is there a small efficiency that you can unlock at work? It doesn't have to be big. Just something that would make your life a little bit easier. For me, I've started reviewing my calendar on Friday for the week ahead. I can know what to expect, what things to move around, and avoid those Sunday scaries. And number 2, you heard the man. Send more emails or Slack messages or Teams chats. Let your colleagues know about upcoming deadlines. Push progress updates. Everyone wants to feel good. Send that pre-read or the meeting agenda. Think about getting the information to them before they ask. And check out Justin's book, How to Write an Email. It will help you to communicate consistently, concisely, and efficiently. Thanks for joining me this week on The Lift. For more info on what you heard in today's episode, visit our show notes. You can find out more about the show at theliftpod.com. If listening to The Lift today was a good use of your time, please share it with a colleague, a friend, I don't know, your ex, your mother, anyone. Don't let good advice die with you. And for those of you who like to earn a little bit of extra credit, leave a comment on Spotify. We'd love to hear from you. The Lift is produced and edited by the team at Edit Audio. This episode was produced and edited by Ali Sirwa, with additional production support from Victoria Marin. Our production manager is Kathleen Speckert. Our executive producer is Steph Colburn. A special thanks to Corey Rich and Beth Gatzik. There's only one way to go, upward.